Hello everybody and welcome to the Along Come Norwich YouTube channel for the first video here, the first match reaction, and my goodness, what a way to start the videos on this channel. Norwich City have beaten Millwall by 3-1 at Carrow Road this afternoon in the blistering heat, in my opinion. Anyway, as a redhead, this weather is quite dangerous for me. But goodness me, what a performance. And it's nice as a Norwich City fan to leave Carrow Road satisfied for all the right reasons. A performance where everything was clearly left out on the pitch. A lot of effort was put into it. Tactically, I thought Norwich were superior, superb. And just I'm sat here just kind of thinking, goodness me, it's relieving that we're back to perhaps talking about Norwich's qualities and not how things are going wrong and in certain different ways, etc. But yeah, we'll start with the lineup as we shall do in these videos. One change from Southampton, which was on our Hernandez due to his handbrake, which, goodness me, if you've seen that photo that he posted on his social media, that looks quite brutal. So hopefully he heals as quick as possible. But that 11, especially after the Southampton game and the goals that were scored there, you're thinking, right, come on, can we see sort of a repeat of this, constant creation of chances and maybe not great defending against Southampton, but we saw the better side of that performance and we saw an improvement in terms of defending. Don't get me wrong, there were still a sort of couple of more shaky moments, but on the whole, I thought Norwich City were superior to Millwall today. And, Millwall are no walk in the park, are they? We always know that when we played them last season, they were really pushing for promotion towards the back end especially. But today, they weren't great, but that's because Norwich City, pinned them in their own half, essentially. And the calls after the game during the game, even from the Millwall fans of row it out. I don't really know the context, but it seemed a little bit harsh that a couple of games into a season, especially after a promotion push, it seemed a little bit harsh, but I'm not a Millwall fan, so what do I know? But looking at that Norwich City shape today, it was so nice to see the fullback so high up the pitch. And one thing that I noticed early in the game is this difference between Fastnacht and Hernandez. Hernandez does like to come in, but the way Fastnacht, sort of constantly came into the pitch and it allowed Stacey to get forward was really interesting. I think on the back foot, maybe it caught us out a couple of times in terms of when you do have those players forward, it will create that gap for Millwall players to get into. But it's not so much I'm going to sit here and say Norwich City need to work on it. It's just a product of Norwich playing the way they want to play. I think one of the things we said about David Wagner before he came in was this idea of, look, if we're going to try and play this heavy metal goal scoring football, you're going to have to concede a few chances now and again. And in my opinion, absolutely nothing wrong with it. And this Norwich City team play with such a fluidity. And one thing that, I think we probably did under Daniel Farke as well, but one thing I really thought today when watching it was we're so composed on the ball. We're really just sort of picking our chances. When Duffy or Gibson have the ball, they're happy to just stand there for a second and pick their pass. And when you've got Kenny McLean in the form that he's in at the moment, but when you've got Gabby Sara as well, who is just an outstanding footballer there to literally do anything. I don't think there's one sort of special part of his game which is particularly outstanding. I think across the whole board, Gabriel Sara is just magnificent. He can play those diagonal balls, he can play it to feet, he can take players on. When you have that in front of you, players like Ashley Barnes who can make the ball stick and give it to Sargent or play out wide, and then players like Josh Sargent who on the ball I think is really good as well, they will really thrive. And those chances, it wasn't like we were just piling balls out wide and relying on crosses. We were going through the middle as well, and the quality of those chances as well. Norwich City probably could have had 5 or 6 today. I'm not going to say they should have, but you look at that score and think, yeah, it could have been more. And key performers for me, I can't believe I've not really mentioned his name properly yet, is Jon Rowe. My goodness, what a player. His story, in terms of getting to Norwich City and establishing himself, just makes you want him to really just achieve greatness, because, you look at when he made his debut in the Premier League, cool, we saw some flashes of excellence, we saw a little bit of this, and we thought, oh, well, I don't mind that. And then you look at last season, and I think it was the same for Adam Eder a couple of seasons ago, this young player who wants to break through, injuries just make that, basically impossible for the young lad. And this season to be really grasping that opportunity it's just an absolute pleasure to watch. And as a footballer, he's magnificent. He's quick, he's confident, he's on the ball, very agile. And one thing that you really notice, and you look across that front line especially, is Norwich's press, and Jon Rowe is a big part of that, where you lose the ball, there's no throwing of arms in the air like perhaps we've seen from youth products in the past. It's go and win the ball back, go and get the ball back for your team, and that kind of mentality is something that David Wagner is very clearly implementing. I think Ashley Barnes was listening to Canary Call on the way back from the game. Ashley Barnes has spoken to Chris Gorham about how important this mentality is, and the older lads who have come into the team are really trying to imprint that on everyone, but the younger players especially. And at the moment, a few games into the season where everything is seeming fairly rosy, that attitude is paying early dividends, which is it is very nice. And a player that I do want to give a special mention to is Josh Sargent. Josh Sargent has been round the mill at Norwich City, where we've sat there and said perhaps he looks a bit like a competition winner at times, but he's really, really coming into his own as the number 9. And Ashley Barnes, and I think the majority anyway, thought that Ashley Barnes would help elevate that side of Sargent's game, where he can just go and essentially do what he wants down the middle and on the ball. I've always thought he's very good. I've always thought for a striker, a guy of his size as well, because he's not small, always thought on the ball he's fantastic. He's not slow either. And Ashley Barnes being there they have this interesting dynamic where they sort of take it in turns to be the number 9 essentially. Josh Sargent is the number 9, both literally and on the pitch, but having that ability to, and I noticed it early on in the game, to sort of drop deep and get a few touches onto the ball and get yourself into the game is such an important thing, because it's not like perhaps how Timu Pukki found himself, which is where you're up front and sort of walking around and waiting for chances, and perhaps when you get that first chance, I don't know, the 15th, 20th minute, you've not really touched the ball, so you're not particularly sharp. Having that experience behind Josh Sargent is so important. And again, aside of Norwich's game, which is really exciting to me as a fan, it's something that I've wanted for such a long time, is I don't know what the non-sweary version of it is, but I think you kind of get the lines that I'm trying to get across, the idea, that I'm trying to get across. But Norwich's attitude is they're just winners. They're just out there. They're there for the fight. They're ready to scrap. And it's something that Norwich have just been too soft for far too long, too passive as well. But to see this side of the game, the more dirty side of the game, and within reason, we don't want things to get dangerous. But Ashley Barnes, to the goalkeeper from the free kick, getting in his way and standing on the ball, stuff like that. It's the basics we've cried out for, and when you see them implemented, it's just like, why haven't we been doing this the whole time? But that is the life of being a Norwich City fan. In terms of Millwall, I don't think they were the worst, but I think it speaks volumes of what can happen in this league, where you can finish, I think they finished 8th or 7th last season, you can finish up near the playoffs, and then the following season, you're starting from scratch. There's no loyalty from the league that says, no, you're a top 8. It's not like the Premier League, where you're essentially, if you're like top 8, top 7, top 6, whatever you want to call it, you're essentially going to get that place again. It's not like that in the Championship, which for Millwall isn't a good thing for Norwich. It's a great thing where we finished below bottom half, didn't we? We finished in the bottom half, sorry, which means that this season we can start again and go again. But yeah, I think that's probably just about everything, I'm trying to think of other performers as well. Jack Stacey, by the way, good player, fantastic right back. He's not going to pull up trees defensively, but I would always say fullbacks don't defend in this era of football. That's not what they're there for. They're there to give you extra width, essentially, on the front foot. But in terms of where Norwich find themselves, the depth in the squad is quite strong. The substitutes we'll talk about, it sucked the life out of the game a little bit, but that's not a problem. The goal is a bit like, right, well, let's see how we can work on how perhaps we don't let that happen again. But for me, it's not a problem at all. You look at the players that were coming on, Adam Eder, who's already got a goal this season, Nunez as well, Springett. It'd be interesting to see where he goes. McCallum, be interesting again to see if he's here. Obviously linked with a move away earlier, that didn't go ahead. It'd be interesting to see how or what direction that goes in. Either you've got players like Sorensen who are to come back, you've got players like Grant Hanley as well to come back. So where Norwich City find themselves is in a very strong position. And one thing I will say is that connection between the fans and Norwich City that's being created, that's being forged by David Wagner, is we can enjoy ourselves today after a win, and we can clap, we can cheer, we can give our thanks. But building that connection, building that bridge now when things are perky, things are looking good, we will be there for you when things get tough, is what will happen. And I think when things get tough this season, which they will, maybe once or twice, however long that period is, we don't know, but we will be there as Norwich City fans, because we are now buying into a project. We have something to believe in, we have something to hold on to. And yeah, already a couple of games into the season, so we won't get too carried away. But all the signs are looking positive. It's not like we're at the beginning of a completely brand new era. It's just a case of Norwich City doing things a bit better, and in these sort of new, fresh ways, if you will. But it's incredibly exciting to be a Norwich City fan at the moment. In terms of content to come, we've got a whole host coming on the channel. We've got podcasts, live shows, Norwich City women's content. The last time I checked, by the way, I think it was, they might have scored again, but it was Norwich 1, Sudbury 0 in the women's match. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But we've got a whole host of things coming to the channel. Very exciting stuff ahead. Hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you fancy it. Leave a little like if you're feeling generous too. And hopefully I'll see you again very, very soon.